Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the BCS annual conference. This is our keynote session, for which we have a academic from the world of marketing, Elena Shevchenko, who's going to be taking us through what are some useful ideas for digital marketing that we can transfer across into the way we think about how we provide services within the IT service management landscape. So, as I'm sure you're able to introduce yourself far better than I can, Elena, I will hand over to you. But just before I do so, just a couple of quick notes in terms of the presentation. Please feel free to ask questions. We will be pausing at certain points. You can use the question and answer and chat capabilities to do that. And please be aware that on the 19th to the 21st of October, the rest of the conference will be running with 3 sessions per day. You can find more details for that on the conference website. So without further ado, Elena, if you could introduce yourself and proceed with your presentation.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Richard. In fact, I am a digital marketing academic, but I'm one of those good academics that come from the industry. So I worked in the practical marketing, hospitality, and education sector for a while in the Middle East, and then I continued my career in academia, where I'm trying to produce some interesting research that would be interesting not only for academics, but also for marketing practitioners. So it's something which I'm quite excited about, and integrating academic research and bridging this gap between academic research and practice in the field of marketing, which is a highly practical field. So in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about digital marketing and what we do. Under the title of Beyond Annoying Ads and Useful Ideas from Digital Marketing. So I probably should have included the word hopefully there, which hopefully you will find useful. Also on a personal level, it's probably an attempt to redeem digital marketing a little bit, because we all know about the reputation, and also to prove that we don't teach our students to do all these things digital marketing practitioners are usually blamed of doing. So without further ado, let me first ask you a question, and this question would be, sorry, pressing the wrong buttons. What is marketing? So I'll give a few seconds for you to think about potential words, and feel free to post those in chat if you would like to, and Richard will pass to me if he sees anything which is interesting or any response from you. So usually when I ask this question to students in my first digital marketing lecture, they usually say things like advertising, sales. Richard, is there something?
We're getting some things coming through. We have spreading the word.
Good. Especially in the context of digital, yeah.
We have serving customers with their needs and wants.
Wow, I like this one.
We have marketing is how you connect your message to your tribe.
So I see some people are familiar probably with cultural theory or cultural marketing. Yeah, so definitely shouldn't dumb it down for this audience. Thank you very much for your answers. And so they actually exceed my expectations. And usually what I get when I tell people what I do, for example, in social event, is something in this line. Yeah, so usually people tell me that marketing is evil. Yeah, so people usually associate marketing and digital marketing in particular with all those practices of manipulation, trying to push and make you buy things that you don't need, and so on. And as you see, this very popular article, in fact, it comes as one of the first articles about digital marketing, if you Google for it, it's coming from a psychologist, yeah, so Psychology Weekly, if I'm not mistaken. So it's talking about all these manipulative practices the digital marketing is connected to in people's minds. To investigate this further, I decided to do a little bit of research of my own, and I just analyzed search terms which come with marketing. There is this very nice tool which is called Answer the Public, which allowed me to do so. And yeah, as you can see, the words which are usually associated with marketing, words like job, salary, strategy, communications. So it's pretty much in the vein of business. And I guess some people are interested in jobs in marketing, how much they could earn, how it connects to the strategy. Also in small font there to the left, if you're curious, later on in my presentation, you can find word Jesus. Not sure how it's related, but yeah, you can get weird associations sometimes. So it's pretty much falling under business domain, and people doing business potentially are interested in learning about marketing. Yeah, its connection with all those things. So this is why I decided to also pull the most important or the most popular definition of marketing from the business perspective, non-marketing perspective though, but business practitioner perspective. This is a definition from Investopedia, which people quote a lot in their presentation. As you can see, if you create a word cloud from that article, it's strongly associated with product distribution, which comes a little bit surprising. Buying, selling, not so much. Yeah, you can see their definition is much worse than yours from the marketing practitioner perspective or marketing academic perspective. So associated with buying, selling, advertising, delivering products. And in fact, it's surprising on one hand, because of what we know about marketing nowadays and how we understand marketing nowadays in academia, but it's also not surprising when we take into account the history of marketing and how the marketing concept was generated. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Yeah, so this is the evolution of marketing thought. And as many of you probably know, it all started with Industrial Revolution, and where the focus was on the product, producing the best quality of product, optimizing the production with the conveyor belts and other technology which appeared at that time, building reputation of the brand. Yeah, so consumers will buy something because it's so good, because of this good quality, and we're trying to create it and earn as much money as possible on that. Yeah, so the price was determined by the price of production. The promotion was barely existing, and so it was mostly reaching to the customers and telling, yes, I have the best product in the world. Then it evolved into, as production grew, it evolved into the concept of sales or sales approach to promotion, to marketing. Marketing didn't exist at that time yet. So usually you would, probably the best association for that would be that traveling salesman that knocking at your door and trying to sell you that vacuum cleaner that you don't need, or maybe need, but didn't suspect that you need it, right? So it's all focused on promotion, attractive pricing, discounting, possibly throwing in some additional services on a later stage of sales approach. And then in the 60s, with the work of Kotler, we arrived to the concept of marketing. And here there's entirely new focus, and some of you gave it as a definition of marketing, with the focus on customer wants, on customer needs. It was quite a novel approach, because before setting out the price and before thinking about how we are going to promote the product and what kind of profits we're going to generate, we are thinking about what can we do to satisfy certain needs of customers that have been undersatisfied or not satisfied at all. Right, so think about customer first, and then we develop attractive pricing, we develop the promotional channels through which these customers could be reached, and we think about all other aspects of production. At least ideally, that was the novel approach to marketing. Obviously, in reality, you see the combination of all these approaches. And quite obviously and quite modestly, it arrived to the idea in the 90s that marketing is pretty much everything. Yeah. Marketing is everybody's job, and there are a lot of articles which were talking about marketing being everywhere, everything. And it all started in the 90s. You can see by the work by Regis McKenna, you might have heard his name. He's one of the gurus of technology adoption and marketing, and public speaker. I think he's in his 90s right now. So his novel article published in Harvard Business Review pretty much defines what we think about marketing today. And as you can see, it's coming from marketing practice, not from academia. Yeah. So first of all, it talks about marketing going beyond the business function. So by that time, we already arrived to the understanding of marketing as an important business function that links customers, market people, and the company. Yeah, so making it profitable. But here he was one of the first people who start talking about marketing as the way of doing business. I'm quoting his words here, or how I prefer to call it, to define it in my lecture, customer-oriented philosophy of business. Yeah, so when we think about customer pretty much in every step of doing business. And another novel thing in his article is, that's why I crossed over the new marketing, because the article is quite old and the approach is actually quite old. The idea is quite old, but it's still considered new by some marketing practitioners and academics, is this focus of knowledge, experience, and relationship and value in terms of satisfying those customer needs and linking all this to the customer. So not only just selling and satisfying this with the product, but going beyond that and building experiences, building relationship, lasting relationships preferably, creating value on every step of the way. So starting with production and even before that and after the production. Yeah, so start talking about the importance of service and knowledge. Yeah, so which quite often could be communicated with the technology. So it's one of the first articles and one of the first ideas that came together, that highlighted the importance of technology as an essential part of this process, of the marketing process, not only as a source of competitive advantage or enhancement of the product, or maybe easing the production, bringing down the production cost. So that probably what brings in the importance of IT departments and being an integral part of marketing, and as well as probably highlights the commonality between these two functions, right? As them being everywhere in organization, which probably could be interesting to you. So, and that's how I arrived to the concept of digital marketing, which we probably know came to life somewhere about year 2000, or maybe slightly before that. And the reason why I crossed it over again with the digital marketing, I believe that marketing is pretty much digital anyway, at least in the Western world. And but strictly speaking, when you see the term digital marketing, you usually think about all the technology-enabled marketing. Yeah, so the mobile phone marketing, email marketing. So thinking about all these communication channels. Well, it's obviously going beyond that. Another idea which is quite obvious for marketing practitioners and marketing academics, which again could be interesting for service management, IT service management practitioners, would be the idea of internal and external marketing. And as again, you can see that it's not a very new idea, yeah, based on the article coming from 1995, where Piercy talks about customer satisfaction and he splits between internal and external marketing. So this is one of the first articles that started talking about marketing and internal customers. Yes, so in terms of internal customers, which are stakeholders, employees, people, sometimes families of the employees of the company. So basically everybody whom we would call stakeholders. Yeah, and as you can see, that includes the strategy in terms of internal marketing, includes similar elements: product, price, communication, distribution. Yeah, so we're not talking about only traditional paying customers here, but and probably would be quite interesting for you to know that this idea has been explored by marketing research for quite a while nowadays. Yeah, also it brings functions together and pretty much tells us that we, like IT service management professionals and marketers, may be facing similar challenges. Yeah, so nowadays, of course, it's all enabled by technology. Yeah, that's why. Which brings again all of this together. So usually when we start talking about marketing, we talk about segmentation, and that's where we start thinking about market, the needs and the wants of the customer, who our customers are. So the first question we usually ask when we are writing a marketing plan or doing pretty much anything, even a coursework in marketing. So it has to be a meaningful group, as you can see from this diagram, and it has to be selected or targeted. You probably heard it if you many of you probably have taken business courses before, so you've heard of all this. And then we're depending on the market, on the needs and the wants of these customers. We're thinking about product, we're thinking about price, we're thinking about place. So this is the marketing definition in action. And there are several segmentation bases which people use. So this is one of the newer ones, which are coming from analytical approach and use of analytics. So we're talking about behavioral segmentation, psychological. We're thinking about how people are using technology, what media they use, what kind of consumption patterns they have. Then we're thinking about people's personality, perceptions, attitudes, motives. And usually when we're talking about segmentation, it really comes in the form of very boring tables, which look a bit impersonal. Not that they're bad, they're maybe quite useful, especially nowadays when they're coming from analytics, from the analysis of web pages, from the analysis of from other insights from the research. But a more progressive approach in digital marketing nowadays is the employment of persona. So persona is this construction of an ideal type of customer. And in your context, that could probably be an ideal user or a target user or several users, because you can create several personas. But it also allows to integrate it into one profile and imagine them being a person. Some people even attach pictures or generate pictures with AI. It's possible to generate pictures nowadays to create these personas of their target user or ideal type of customer. This could also be applied to the company. So you can think about your clients as being personas, having certain character traits, because maybe some companies are fun companies and some companies may be older or younger. So thinking about it this way allows to well, first of all, to have fun, obviously, that's what we're all doing in marketing, but also think about it as more user-centered concept and to communicate this idea better. Yeah, so it could be communicated in many various ways, integrating it all together, and also thinking about it and analyzing it on a deeper level than having all these lists of different attributes in Excel table that you would have with your traditional segmentation. And these are some quotes from the paper that talks about it in more detail. So there are certain benefits of using personas in terms of communications, psychology, transformations. For example, it allows to fight the existing misperceptions about customers, maybe sometimes, or think about conflicting attributes. Yeah, so we cannot have a older person being a millennial, for example. Yeah, so allows us to see and focus on a particular customer profile better. Yeah, so instead of just combining and having this lack of focus, which sometimes is an issue here. So probably that could be useful for somebody in your field because you can think about it on multiple levels in terms of stakeholders, in terms of your client companies and potential end users, and also understand their challenges better, yeah, which could be very important for developing an adequate solution. And as I mentioned before, digital marketing and IT service management probably would also be facing similar challenges. And one of them comes from my area of research, which is customer engagement, customer-consumer engagement. And with the emergence of technology, there are a few challenges that we face in this regard. And one of them has to do with the decrease in attention span. Nowadays, it's, I think in 2012, it was 8 minutes. It can be less nowadays. So people are only prepared to look at the piece of content for maximum of 8 minutes. Yeah. A major challenge I face with my students in teaching digital marketing, but I guess that applies to pretty much everyone nowadays, right? So who should be considered when creating documents, probably should be considered when developing the solutions that will allow to prioritize tasks and make the best of that attention, very short attention. It also has to do with the psychological complexity, which I defined here as a multidimensionality. You don't have to use this complicated word. So it's basically thinking about engagement as a process which doesn't only involve thoughts, but also behavior and emotional. So people connect with content, with technology, or engage with technology on an emotional level too. Yeah. So thinking about when developing the solutions, thinking about the emotions people may be struggling with there, or maybe some thoughts, or maybe the context and behaviors you would like to facilitate? So would you like people to click on this button? Or would you like people to, if we're talking about digital marketing, if you want people to comment on this content, would you want people to go to your landing page, or do you want people to go to Facebook, yeah, and sign up to your event? So thinking about engagement in terms of all these aspects. There are many more to that, but it's a very psychologically complex, and that's why it's so difficult to engage customers. Yeah, so everybody talks about engagement nowadays, but there are very few recipes for engagement because it's so complex. And then to add to the complexity of it, we don't engage with one thing at a time. Yeah, we engage with multiple stakeholders, multiple pieces of content, multiple systems, especially as a digital users. So we're always subjected to this to this stream of content, tasks that pop out in our calendars, and all sorts of digital noise too. So it's very important to break through all this noise and get the attention of the customer. So in IT service management context, you may think about prioritizing tasks, about thinking about attractive designs that would attract attention, things popping up, and so on. So you probably would have your own ideas about it. Yeah, about engaging design and convenience for the users. That's one of the things that would probably help to capitalize on engagement theme and apply some of those recipes from digital marketing in terms of engagement. One of the theoretical tools that we use in digital marketing in order to work with the challenge of user and customer engagement is social impact. And again, it's quite an old theory, but it's been revived with the emergence of digital marketing. Its main premise is that if you have a strong source of the message, dealing with the messages in its original form, for example, if a message is coming from an expert in the field or a very popular person, a very relevant person, people tend to be impacted this much stronger. If the message is immediate, it may be immediate in terms of time, happening right now, or it may be happening in the same place, like happening in the same city. So where, for example, if we read information about COVID, we are more likely to react and engage with the content that is about our geographical location, for example, United Kingdom, rather than thinking about the news coming from Africa. And social immediacy, when we are reacting better or stronger to the messages which are coming from the same social context, yeah, from people like us. And it has to do with number of sources. The more we hear about certain things, the more we are impacted by those messages. Yeah, so if something is coming literally out of woodwork, it's very difficult not to notice that. Yeah, so usually, traditionally, this explains the effects of media and messages on people, but and of course, there are certain uses for it in sales and marketing practices in terms of marketing communications. But this could also be applied in the level of communication with the customers on the consultancy level, for example, whom you would think about getting together with. So would you think about implementation, for example, of your solution? So about how convenient it is in terms of working with local date and time format on names and languages. Yeah, so that's how you would utilize on immediacy here. Or how many problems does it help solve? How many people in an organization would be using this technology? Would it help with its adoption? Are the CEOs of the company and important and people with good reputation in the company involved in the process? Yeah, so here we're thinking about in terms of strength of the message. So this theory is very useful and could be applied in so many levels. And it's one of the dominant theories in digital marketing now. So you may think about your own challenges, and I'm happy if you would like to share the ideas at the end of the presentation, how you may find this one useful. Also, social impact theory helps to work with the challenge of technology adoption, because in digital marketing, as well as probably in IT service management, you face the challenge quite a lot. And for this, it's very important to understand the process of technology adoption, which in digital marketing, and this is the reference to the textbook that we're using in our digital marketing courses, is talking about technology adoption as a process, and it's important to understand where your users are right now, for example, where the organizations you're working with are right now. So first, as we think people become aware of the technology, of the existence of the technology, even before facing it. So people are talking about this wonderful tool that's been used. For example, even we may recall the times when people started talking about emails, some of you. Then there is a stage of rehearsal where people are considering how useful it could be, benefits, risks, outcomes, not always consciously, just going through this stage, then trial. So sometimes testing of the technology, sometimes observing other people using the technology. And then we're talking about acceptance or rejection, and continuous and discontinuous. And these are also very important stages, because that's where people, that's where basically either get or lose the customer quite often, right? So unfortunately, I'm not going to talk much about those last two stages, just because in digital marketing we don't look at them so much, but I will just raise and highlight their importance, and for the practice, if you're interested, of course. So we start with the awareness, and here usually the users and customers, depending on what context we're talking about, are knowing about the existence of the technology. This could be facilitated with mass communication, sometimes with movies, like, for example, famous examples of Star Trek, having pretty much iPads. So we don't really know if those were, if the design of the modern iPads was inspired by those, or the other way around, right? Because of their actual need there. Awareness can also be gained actively, is when we have a problem, we are looking for the solution. I guess you face a lot of those situations in your practice. And passively, advertising driven, yes. Or sometimes you can probably add in your context, just because the CEO decided to employ certain technology. So it's not the problem. So people may not be really aware of the existence of the problem on their level, and that's maybe create any challenges. That's why it's very important to, within organization, to employ change agents. And in the context of digital marketing, they are those influencers. People are using technology and talking about it, and sometimes they even send the free samples. For example, remember the Google glasses, which were sent to a number of celebrities, which are going around and posing. Unfortunately, it's not a very good example because it didn't work out, but it still raised the awareness, and the change agents works, when the technology supports that. So that's one of the ideas I think could be interesting to employ in your context, thinking about somebody in an organization that would be using and promoting the benefits of the technology. So somebody who will really be keen and active and talking about it, maybe somebody who will be helping you to train people. And then there is this wonderful theory, which is called social contagion theory, that explains when the large number of people use technology, it's harder to resist. And we can see multiple examples of that in our daily life. Even digital dissidents sooner or later start using the technology. Even our grandparents sometimes use Apple Watches and so on, because they're forced to use, because there are a large number of people using it, and it's difficult to imagine life without it. So the same could be applied in the organization when with the existing, here it overlaps a little bit with the social impact theory that I talked about, right? With the large number of users, people are most likely to use technology. And again, it helps to overcome the barriers to adoption, because people don't like change, as we know, right? People don't like learning new things unless it's necessary. So these could be the things that could help with the adoption, because that's our ultimate goal here, right? Both digital marketers and IT service management, I suspect. I don't know much about it, but from what I heard, right? And another useful theory could be the diffusion of innovation theory, which you may have heard of. Again, it's a bit more recent theory, and it talks about attributes of the innovation. And by innovation, I mean the piece of technology that people would like to adopt. So this one is this definition of innovation. So in order for to facilitate the adoption of a certain piece of technology or a product, we have to think about relative advantage. So what other advantages, what advantages does it have? It could lower cost on organizational level. It can be of greater convenience, can help solve problems better, or have a better status sometimes. Yeah, so sometimes we are talking about, oh, I have a Google or Apple Watch, not because it does something better for me, but because it is a symbol of status. And sometimes also in organizational settings, you can be, we want this piece of software because it is popular, because it's coming from this brand with a very strong name, and so on and so forth. So people may be showing off how well they use the technology. Compatibility with values, needs, and experiences of adopters has to be high, yeah, in order to facilitate the adoption. And again, it's very important because nowadays people pay a lot of attention to identity, and you may think about it in organizations, people have to probably associate with the companies with a better reputation, with the ethics. Ethics comes in the importance of ethics is rising, and think about the how whatever solution is there fits within the corporate culture, because again, we're talking a lot about corporate culture, and there are companies which are trying to align this with their values, which again, you probably have better examples of from your practice. Complexity has to be low, especially now with the attention span and all other issues and lack of time. Observability has to be high. So we have to be really seeing the advantages and benefits. That's where your ambassadors and change ambassadors can come in. And trialability has to be also high. So people have to be able to try before they buy. And probably you also have experienced that and have the solutions already in place for that. So that helps, also helps to identify the potential problems, yeah, coming through from the process. And in case of a software product, probably allows to adapt it better to the needs. Of course, whenever we have facilitators, we have barriers, and main barriers which are coming from, which we identify in digital marketing research, is uncertainty and risk. Probably very similar to what you're thinking about. So when somebody adopts new technology, doesn't matter in organizational and personal settings, they don't really know if it's going to help them and what is going to happen. And here we're talking about perceived risk. So things that we get from the media, for example, that's when many scare stories about the invasion of privacy are coming in. So people are very cautious, for example, about using digital technology, about signing up for things, and sometimes rightfully so. And we're talking about actual risks here. So on the level of rehearsal, it's mostly perceived risks we're talking about. And there are other marketing theories which take it, digital marketing theories that take it into account. So risks could be of different kinds. So we're talking about financial risk, performance risk, and convenience risk. I guess those can go without explanation for you. They're probably all in your project plans. Social and psychological risks are, however, quite often ignored. So these are the risks which, for example, end users may experience. Yes, so there may be social risks connected to the loss of reputation within an organization without resulting from not being able to use the technology and not produce the result. There could be some concerns which can affect people's self-esteem, sometimes even mental health, because change is not easy, and some, especially older users, for example, may not be so confident in using the technology. There may be risks to reputation. So these all of this possibly could be taken into account. And again, there's quite a lot of social media marketing research which is coming, which could come handy here, because it talks about all of these risks and how people perceive them and what they associate them with. The next stage identified in our process was trial. And I've already mentioned that triability, observability is very important. In layman terms, that could be put as monkey see, monkey do, right? We really would learn much better from observing somebody using the technology. So you may think about ways in your practice of how making it possible. I know that people conduct workshops, demonstrations. So these are all the tools that you're already using, and maybe you can think about better ways to do that, because it's so important. And again, there are a lot of pieces of research coming from digital marketing and marketing that talk about importance of that. So this is all connected with diffusion innovation theory, which is not a marketing theory, by the way, but it's widely employed in digital marketing. So this ability to observe facilitates rapid diffusion. Again, a lot of research confirming that, and also people able to see real risks, and sometimes the risk concerns are actually addressed with the trial. Yeah, so it reduced the perception of the perceived risks here. Also, it's important to know whether the adoption decision is voluntary or non-voluntary, and here I've included a meme. Yeah, who led the digital transformation in your company, CEO, STO, or COVID-19? And this is one of the examples which we've been subjected to non-voluntary adoption of certain technology. For example, Zoom. Yeah, for me, don't really like it, but have to use it. Yeah, including this presentation. So whether it's a collective or individual decision, again, probably would help to identify the challenges and the barriers to the adoption of technology and possible ways to deal with it within organizations. Also, it's important to understand the motives for use of technology for people. Yeah, usually insights for that coming from long-forgotten theory, which is called uses and gratifications theory. It was initially developed for media research and for television. That's how they used to analyze the motives of people watching television. And you can see that hedonic, utilitarian motives come first, and there are also social and personal motives. So examples of hedonic motives could be, well, just because I enjoy using so. That's why this theory is quite applicable to social media research, and that's why it was revived. Yeah, so maybe you can think about highlighting some hedonic benefits and advantages of using your piece of technology here. Utilitarian motives, obviously, you may it's already thought of and it's quite straightforward in application to your area. Social benefits. Maybe it facilitates communication within the company. And there may be also personal benefits, again, connected with self-empowerment, maybe use of personal time. If, for example, your piece of technology saves time and frees up some personal time for people. And in general, being able and capable to achieve more, being more productive. So again, when talking to your customers, you may think about all those benefits that come from these uses and gratifications. Could also be used as a checklist sometimes. So this is uses and gratification theory, and a lot of research there in terms of digital marketing. For example, there are models created for Facebook, for use of Instagram, and frankly speaking, my research also works with that. So I'm talking about Instagram and engagement with different pieces of content. And the newest theory, which was developed quite recently, was it 2020, which in contrast to other theories, doesn't talk about personal motivations for the use of technology or some attributes of the technology that make its adoption more or less likely. And this is talking about this theory talks about the adoption of technology from the cultural perspective as a cultural phenomenon or cultural archetype even. So as you can see, the terminology used here is also a little bit cultural, yeah, not very specific to the context here. And it talks about different stages. And as you can see, it visualized as a monster, yeah, to highlight. Sometimes it's called monster theory, and because of this snake here. So it's talking about the adoption of technology as a circle, where it all starts with the cultural awareness or something becoming part of the mass culture, with the example that I've given. From Star Trek, for example, all the communications, they're using touch screens and things, and using things which look a little bit like flip phones, and later on they look a bit like iPads. So it's there in the culture. The ideas of use of technology are there in the culture. And in your context, you may think about not only sci-fi examples, but maybe some examples highlighted by futurists, or maybe even coming from corporate culture with certain things that are important for the company. So, but in digital marketing, it's mostly ideas connected with the romantic ideas coming from science fiction, utopian excitement. Yes, it's all this promise of easier life or things that are going to help solve certain problem. Then it comes to the stage of the promise, growing promise of gratification. Is when in digital marketing we call it sometimes a stage of hype, yeah, and a lot of hype is created about using a certain technology, which are communications, and we see people using technology. So again, in the organizational context, that could be like everybody is using that, or you can see the examples of other companies that are able to achieve success. And this could be generated by the users, by consumers, and by marketers sometimes. Then there is a ludic stage, and it's more about delight of gaining access to the technology. Yes, I finally have this Apple Watch and I can use it and I can go around with it and show everyone I have an Apple Watch. All this excitement. I guess in your context, there's not much excitement maybe in use of some pieces of technology, or maybe there is. Yeah, when people really see the solution to their problem. And then it goes to normalization, yeah, and sometimes even to the stage of disappointment or loss, sense of loss, because sometimes the technology displaces something which is quite valuable for people. Like, for example, if before I used to go to this really cute guy when I had an IT guy when I had a problem with my computer, yeah, and could have a chat with him about Star Trek. Nowadays, I just send him a request via email and I receive a ticket back, yeah, not even a personal message. So it may actually lead to less satisfying and less gratifying experiences, and that's how the need for new technology comes up. That's why this is a loop, yeah, and that's why it's a snake eating its own tail, because it doesn't matter how much we satisfy people's needs with technology, people always will generate new needs for technology. Yeah. So again, something which could possibly be taken into account in your context. Well, I guess that will be the newest and the last piece of insight from digital marketing research or digital marketing academic lectureship too. So I guess I will be just ready for your questions and answers if there are any. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay. Okay. Excellent, Elena. So we've got a few questions here. I'm going to start with the boring ones, which are all kind of, shall we say, technical in nature. People have been asking about the slides and about the recording of the webinar. So yeah, this webinar is being recorded and it will be replayed live in the run-up to our conference dates, and from then onwards it will be available online, and you should all receive a link to it when it becomes available. Everyone who's registered on the call, we have your email addresses, so that should happen all automatically. We also have some questions about the presentation slides, so the same goes for that. They will become available through that. We also have several ones which have come in the last few seconds. So thank you. Will this webinar be shared? You've done so well. Thank you. Double kiss. So obviously the cute IT guy is on the call today. Glad you enjoyed it. For great presentation, very lucid presentation, great presentation. But going back to something that was from an early part of your presentation, and I must say I do not fully understand all of this myself, so it might require a little bit of explanation. So you are mentioning the 4 Ps of marketing. Some other authors have described the 7 Ps of marketing with addition of people, processes, etc. That sounds like 2 out of the 3 extra Ps in my book. Should we consider 4 Ps or 7 Ps in digital marketing? What's your advice based on your experience? So I think I'd start with, what are the 4 and 7 Ps of marketing? If you happen to know off the top of your head what they are. I remember from my ITIL books, there was 4 Ps of service design and 4 Ps of service transition, and I could not tell you what they are now, even though I did pass the exams on them. So yes, going back in your slide deck, that was definitely around about here-ish.
Yeah, I'm just going back to my slide for some visual support, because again, people may not remember it from the top of their head, even those that did really well in their business courses in school. Right, so product, price, place, and promotion, the 4 Ps concept of marketing, which people got a little bit tired of nowadays. And by the way, you can find 7 Ps, you can find 8 Ps, you can find Cs nowadays, yeah, when product is replaced with, well, I'm not sure already about the 4 Cs because it's less less imprint in my memory, but yeah, you can find multiple adaptations of that process. So the main theme that unites all of them is that we first think about customers, and then we adapt all these elements to the needs and wants of the customers, right? So we create products that serve the needs of the customers at the price they're ready to pay for it. We distribute them, place as a distribution. We distribute them through the channels people want to buy them. For example, there were major changes in distribution channels, resulting from the pandemic and or the corona situation. And the promotion, yeah, we promote through the channels that are convenient to our customers. And Richard mentioned 3 other P's, which are people, process, and what was the third one?
In the chat, it says etc.
Etc. Yeah. So there is a people, people, process, and okay, I may remember it when I start talking about it. So people, those additional 3 P's apply to service marketing. So usually you can find them in service marketing textbook. They apply to service context, but nowadays it's actually extended because I can think of very few examples when product is separated from service. So most of the time, and for example, if we create intangible products, I still consider IT products intangible. Some people might argue with me, but still, when we consider something like that, the product does not. It's very difficult to separate it from service. So we're talking about people as being part of the process of marketing. So in classical service encounters, that would be the uniform of the weight of the personality of the people. For example, if you think about, it has to be. People have to be friends of certain personality type to be able to serve and contributing to the product. Yeah, so all those people that creating the code and all those people that are delivering the service, explaining, for example, IT service professionals or consultants that are going together with the product and presenting it. There will be people in this model, and again, they have to be something which would help to satisfy the needs and wants of the customer. Then we're also talking about process of delivery of service, which again is very difficult to separate from the product. So in services, product is created as it is delivered usually. So if you go to a restaurant, for example, the service serving you the pizza is an integral part of that product or service that is being delivered to you, right? So it's a part of that experience. I guess you probably can extend it to your context when you're thinking about IT product being delivered by consultants and all those people that adapt this product to the needs of the company. Yeah. And the third one, which I'll probably have to look up, and if anybody remembers, you could
we've got physical evidence.
Physical evidence, yes. Thank you very much. So this is basically that pizza that you have as a part of your experience in the in Pizza Express, for example. Maybe you would be the ones who would think about physical evidence in terms of your context. So maybe it's not there. Not all elements of the model have to apply. But yes, traditionally, this is the model which comes with the services, and you can find more updated, more interesting concepts nowadays. And there are those which are developed specifically for digital marketing. There's a 4Cs model, which talks about concurrence and something else. There are all these different words for that, but the elements may be different, but the idea is the same. Yeah, we adapt all those elements to the needs and wants of the customer.
Okay.
Hope I answered your question.
Well, I have a question of my own I'm going to throw in here. Mm-hmm. Partway through, a few more slides on from here, you started talking. No, I think about here. You started talking about segmentation, mm-hmm. and you made a point about a meaningful segment or a meaningful group. So, do you have any thoughts or guidance as to how you define meaningful, and what constitutes a meaningful group, and how many sorts of groups do you think you should be aiming to look for?
Well, in context of, for example, technology marketing, I'll come up with the product because I guess it will be the most straightforward one. If you think about those iPads, for example, who would be the target marketing? You know, potential segments that would be there that you would think of. So you think about all this multitude and universe of segments, right? All people of all ages, of all countries. So, for example, you thought about younger people, but would you all the younger people in the universe kind of be your target? Yes, it has to be meaningful from the potential of them being interested and being able to buy your product. So if we're talking about iPads, they're quite an expensive product. It means that not all people with coming from all levels of income, for example. So the issue of income would come into play. So you would target those segments that are meaningful in terms of the potential of them actually consuming and buying the product. Probably in terms of IT products, you can think about people that are really in need, or people that really have the technological expertise, or are willing to adopt the technology. In terms of segmentation, segments have to be meaningful, so they are they're coming together. Yeah. So, for example, if you want, you may segment market, and you can put people between 60 and 65-year-old as millennials if you want to. Yeah, but it will not be meaningful. So they have to make sense in terms of the reality. So when you combine the characteristics, the demographic characteristics with behavioral characteristics and other characteristics, they have to be meaningful and make sense from this perspective. And they also have to have the potential of becoming the target. And sometimes also another component which marketers are thinking of is if those needs are satisfied. So if we have a big player in the market already satisfying this need, for example, need for iPads, yeah, it will be very unlikely that you will be targeting this segment. You'll be looking for something where the needs are not satisfied completely or underserved. Yeah. So I don't know if it makes sense or it makes it.
Yeah, that definitely expands on the term meaningful, which I was looking for there. So that works very well. And we have another comment in from JU, who had asked about the 7 and the 4 Ps. He's put that it's a very helpful answer, revolving around the customer's needs and wants. So I think you managed to tick the boxes on that one as well. So we have another question in from Louis or Lewis. So my apologies if I've mispronounced your name at least once. From an ignorance in marketing, do you think social media and digital marketing is transversal to all markets and all geographical areas?
That probably connects to the previous question about segmentation. Yeah, it has to make sense and be meaningful. So, and it's quite common misperception about people from people that are having, for example, people have business and they think, oh, everybody is on social media and I have to be there. So the first question I would ask these people, why do you want to be there? Why do you think it would work? Because it wouldn't work definitely for everyone, all markets and all geographical areas. We are not only talking about the majority of the world not having access to all the technology we have here in the Western world, for example. So that's one of the limitations, quite straightforwardly, as not all people in the world have access to social media. But also it's not for everyone based on the personality and based on the needs. So if we're talking about older people, for example, they don't have such a desire to be on social media. Sometimes they are there, but again, it's probably a very personal choice here, right? So we would hardly be generalizing into the whole population of those people, right? You may be thinking about people which are becoming actually more and more numerous, are people which are calling themselves digital dissidents, and we see quite a lot of resistance to technology because of this image and because of some unethical practices that have been coming from digital marketing and social media marketing. So many people close their Facebook accounts or they shift to less common media because of that. So because of the concerns for their privacy, and it can actually cause real harm. Yeah. So if policies are not applied in the right way. So we may think about all these sources of resistance and actually the movement of digital dissidents, and even sometimes people protesting against technology is on the rise, also because of environmental concerns and other things. So yes, the question will be no, it's very specific, and not all businesses, not all products will be going to social media. Also, social media is very fragmented. So not everybody has to be on Facebook, but some businesses, when it applies to business context, they may choose to be on LinkedIn and other professional social media. It's still social media, though it's less social in terms of its orientation, but it's still a social media network. So yeah, it's very, well, very, it depends with the question, with the answer probably. Yeah.
Well, you got the feedback. It was a great answer. Thank you for your clarity. And the the questioner identifies strongly with what you're saying there. I'd also like to say thank you to Griselle, who I have caught up with the fact that you put things in question and answer, and you have caught up with the fact that I was reading the chat. So we have 3 questions. What do you recommend for a new business? Some new sites or books to improve? And how do you recognize a specific target? I'm a little bit confused by the last one of those 3 there. I think
by specific target. Yeah, maybe Griselle could expand a little bit on that if I'm pronouncing the name right.
Yeah. I don't know. I only know how it's written. So apologies, Griselle, if we're pronouncing your name incorrectly. Some sites or books to improve. Do you have any obvious quick hitters on that one?
Well, in terms of digital marketing and social media marketing, well, there are a lot of books in the market. I wouldn't quote the books from the top of my head, except the one that we're using for our course. But it's not very practical. So it's very good for academic research because it summarizes a lot of ideas and research. But from practical perspective, if somebody is interested in, for example, because digital marketing is not one thing, it's pretty much fragmented. So we have search engine optimization when we're talking about optimizing websites to the needs, wants, and interests of your target customers. So they come up higher on the relevant search results. And then we would maybe talking about advertising in digital spaces. It's entirely different discipline. And then we're talking about social media marketing. So if we're talking about website optimization and search engine optimization and advertising, I would recommend the digital courses by Google, which are free, for example. And here you can get the basic knowledge about analytics too. So if somebody is interested in that, if you're interested in social media marketing, again, if it's a Facebook marketing, then similar courses exist on Facebook, and somebody can get even a qualification for $100 and become an expert in how Facebook functions. And there are also a lot of blogs and electronic sources. Why I would recommend them over the books, because digital marketing and social media marketing is changing pretty much every day. There are changes in algorithms, there are changes in the way it works, new social media are coming up. So books are a little bit static. So that's why they're good for academic research, but not so good for practitioners. There are blogs such as Social Media Examiner, which I read sometimes. Then there is Hootsuite. Hootsuite is a producer of a piece of software that integrates different social media marketing channels, but they also have very useful blogs. And sources such as Harvard Business Review, they provide with good overview articles about recent trends. So being on the top of the trends is very important in this business, and reading from industry practitioners rather than academics, I would go. Yeah,
okay.
It would be more useful. Yeah.
I think you've covered all the bases on that one. So Griselle, if you need any more extra detail on that, do please put that in. We are still awaiting your clarification on the recognizing a specific target. So there's a question there about what would you recommend for a new business?
Well, first one would be pretty much answering what is here in this slide, is first of all thinking about your customer. Who are your customers? And what needs, what wants are there which haven't been served by the current providers? So if I were to open a restaurant, for example, I would think about what potentially popular cuisines or what potentially popular ideas are not represented in my area. So knowing the environment, knowing what people may potentially want, because sometimes wants and needs are not identified, but when the product appears or service appears to satisfy them, people are happy to go along with that. So thinking about the idea, thinking about your differentiation, thinking about how you can stand out. For example, if you're in a busy street of the restaurants, how would you stand out? What would be unique about you? And what will help you to connect and find this touch point between the needs and wants of your potential customers and your business? And starting from there, looking at the marketing research, looking at the statistics, doing a bit of research of your own, as simple as going along the street and seeing what is there, looking at the menus, and trying to find this niche which potentially can be profitable. So that's that would be an advice for a new business. Yeah.
Excellent. So we're getting towards the end of the questions here. So this one I really like because it's more of a provocative question than the others. Lots of websites track users for the purpose of marketing. Is this good or bad? And before you answer this question, may I remind you that this session is being recorded. Will be posted on the internet later.
And possibly collected, analyzed, and transcribed by Zoom, which can also be like one of the things in fine print in your service agreement.
I haven't read it, so I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. We never do. That's one of those deceitful and not so ethical practices, which unfortunately still exist. Doesn't matter GDPRs or not. And again, my answer probably would be it depends. Yeah, good for whom? Good for what? So from the consumer perspective and from the user perspective, I would think about it being as good and bad thing. I would start with the good one. Well, it allows us to use software products, which people spend a lot of time and energy creating basically for free quite often, right? Well, it's not free. I would actually not put it as free because we pay with that information for the usage of products and services. So it makes technology more accessible. And this is good news about all the collection of the information, because that's how they pay for that's how they make their business profitable, because otherwise they wouldn't be created, or they would be only we would have to pay a lot of money for using them. On the bad side of it, of course, because of the user agreements and all these fine print things are really not clear to the consumers. And quite often we are under illusion that this data is not collected and cannot be used against us. Is of course, from that perspective, it could be a very dangerous thing. And governments and regulatory agencies are working with that, but unfortunately they can never cope up with the speed of change in the area, right? So whenever the new policy comes in, the first thing that marketers do are finding the ways to overcome it. And frankly speaking, I cannot think of an adequate solution so far, unless everybody becomes ethical and stops doing that, which probably goes against human nature. Yeah. So good and bad things at the same time. Good for businesses, definitely. For marketers, because they can make their messages more targeted, more interesting for the particular consumer, save money, yeah, instead of being also save a bit of annoyance, yeah, because relevant messages tend to be more interesting and less annoying to the customer, but they can sometimes be more annoying because that makes the customers aware of for example, all those situations when we buy a pair of shoes and we see this pair of shoes for 2 weeks everywhere, yeah, popping up everywhere. So it's pretty annoying, and that's probably when it comes bad, yeah. So as many things in life, depends, yeah.
The one thing I would say on that, as chair of a group whose sole purpose is for the betterment of society, that's me quoting the BCS, does it make IT good for society? We look at what we have in terms of our marketing information. And one of the decisions we made a number of years ago, because we could see from the data that we had, that was to start doing some events in the north of England, because we were pre-COVID doing events more on a monthly basis within London. And one of the reasons for that was that we had a venue that was for free. And was it worth us putting the effort in to go into the north of England? And we used data collection, and part of that was people coming to our website and being able to see their geographic locations. Without that information, it made us very, very blind. Obviously, being part of the BCS, we would obviously use all of that data for the betterment of society, but it's a not-for-profit organization, right? So it's very difficult actually for us to use that in negative consequences. Not all organizations are structured in the same way. So it's an interesting question. So thank you very much for that. And I think with that, we will draw this to a close. So first off, I would like to thank all of you for attending. I can see from the attendees list that pretty much everyone has stayed right through to the end, which is fantastic. And actually our attendees went up during your presentation rather than down, Elena. So that's always a good thing, I feel, as when I'm doing my presentations, to realize that people are still there listening at the end of it. And there is a very high level of thank you notes here. So I would like to add, on top of all of the thank you notes that we have in the chat, which of course have also come through to your screen, although I'm sure you haven't had a chance to read them as yet. I would like to thank you on behalf of the BCS and the group and for everybody here. It's been an excellent and thought-provoking presentation, and it's certainly given me a lot of things that I can utilize and take within the thinking that I apply to the work that I do. And hopefully other people in the group will do the same. One message that's come through here: I would like more digital marketing webinars as it's my specialism. Great work. Okay, I think the two of you probably need to link together and look at where digital marketing specialist groups are. So as we are the service management and IT asset management specialist group. So yes, so thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for everyone who's attending, everyone who's listened to this on a recording. Please go and consume the rest of our conference, as I'm sure the quality will be as high as this was. And with that, I will draw this webinar to a close.